Hi, everybody. I'm Jenny, and I'm joined by my daughter, Maggie.
Hi.
Welcome to Parenting in Hindsight. Today's episode is about building confident kids. So, having conversations with your children that help them to be better communicators and teaching those life skills with them. So, I've been noticing when we're eating out at restaurants that a lot of parents have been ordering their children's meals for them. And it got me wondering, are we missing an opportunity to build confidence in our children by encouraging them to do these little things like ordering for themselves at a restaurant that will help to build confidence in them? So that's what we're going to focus today's episode on: communication skills and building confidence. So I want to start with a little story. One of my friends, who I mentioned in a former podcast, had children a little bit older than my children. And when I first met his son and daughter, they were about 4 and 6. And I was so impressed with these youngsters because they walked up to my husband and me, put out their hands, shook our hands, made eye contact with us, said hello, and told us their names. And I was totally floored that these young kids had such confidence and manners to just walk up to adults that they'd never met and introduce themselves. And I thought, I want my kids to do this when they are this age. And so it was really a great motivator for me to see these kids with such confidence, and I wanted to pass it on to my kids, which I tried to do. And we're going to talk about some of those skills and how we did that with Maggie today.
Yeah, sounds great.
So when my kids were really little, before they could talk, I think, we all know communication is often in body language, and it's more than just the words that come out of our mouths. So when my kids were little, when Maggie and her sister Sarah were little, well, it started with Sarah as the older child, I noticed around 6 to 9 months or thereabouts, they both started to get frustrated because I could tell they wanted to talk. They wanted to communicate with us, but the words weren't coming yet. And so they were like pointing and kind of grunting and getting red-faced and getting upset. And so I did a little research at the time, and it turned out that sign language is a great thing to teach kids at that age to help them to have control over their communication skills. So I got a book from the library called Baby Signs, and I came home and my husband and I learned some very basic sign language words like more. And when our kids were little, they ate Cheerios as a snack. Now there's kind of different kinds of snacks, but this was the word for Cheerio. This was please, and this was thank you. And so we taught those basic things and a few more to Sarah and Maggie, and it really helped to cut down on the frustration. And I know, Maggie, you don't remember this because you were really little, but one of the funniest things that happened when we taught you all sign language is you were having a snack, you were sitting in your high chair, and whatever it was, you wanted more of it. So you were looking at me and doing more, and I said, do you want more? And you nodded your head, and I said, what do you say? And you kept saying more, and I said, you have to say please. And so it would be more please, but you were so frantic, you were like, and it was just so funny. And of course we gave you more, but it really helped to cut down on the frustration. So it gave you those building blocks of communication and words and also manners before you could even speak. And then when you all were in kind of preschool, age 2, 3, 4, and you started really getting much more verbal, the manners were already built into how you communicated. So I know you don't remember that, but it was really helpful. And then teaching you to say, instead of saying, I want juice or I want milk, you said, may I please have, because you had already learned the please and the thank you. So, Maggie, what's your earliest memory of being able to talk with adults and communicate or use your manners?
As far back as I can remember, I remember just starting sentences with, may I please have, whether that's at restaurants, at home, or at a friend's house. I even remember some of our earliest friends were some of the kids of your friends or neighbors or people we were around a lot, we were with their parents and the kids, and addressing the parents by Miss or Mr. and then their first names. And then whether we were at their house, excuse me, Miss so-and-so, may I please go to the bathroom, or may I please have some water, from that as young as I can remember. And I think that taught me to be confident with my friends' parents, because I knew how to address them. I knew that I was allowed to ask for some of these things if I was allowed to ask for it at home. I just had to use those manners. So that was probably in early elementary school and late elementary school that I remember having those communication skills, the manners, and the confidence to order at restaurants. I don't remember a time where I didn't do that, or ask friends' parents for something that I needed at the time.
Yeah, and I remember just watching you and our friends' children. We were all sort of family friends. There were 5 families and their kids. There were like 22 of us all together. And we got together every weekend at somebody's house. And I remember sort of observing that manners were contagious, and the ability to communicate well was a bit contagious because you all did it. It wasn't just 1 or 2 kids that said, may I please have more water, or may I please go to the bathroom. You all did it. And so I think that it was positive reinforcement, both from your little peer group of friends, but also the parents responding very positively to the children being able to speak and communicate well with the adults.
Yeah, and then they respond like, yes, of course you can have, or you're welcome, or thank you. So just everyone in the manners game together helps.
I love that. Everyone in the manners game. Do you remember that having manners, do you remember those manners helping you in school with teachers? Or maybe you didn't think of it as being helpful.
I don't think I even really thought about it, but I worked well with teachers, especially even in elementary school. I remember like maybe missing a recess to like help a teacher inside, and that's just kind of something I like to do. But they probably were drawn more favorably towards me because I was speaking to them in a polite way, and just speaking to them at all, being confident enough to talk to my teachers, ask them if they needed help, if I could help. And we would even like play school in our basement growing up, or our friend's basement. So school was just something I liked doing, but manners with the teachers I'm sure followed suit, and then they just respected me if I was being respectful towards them.
Great. So I want to talk a little bit about going into elementary schools, maybe kind of in the middle of elementary school, so maybe around 3rd grade, 4th grade, and beyond. I really think that at a minimum, or really at the latest, that's when children should be ordering for themselves at restaurants. Looking at the server, making eye contact. They're able to read at that point, at least the kids' menu items. They should know what everything is on that menu. For the kids' menu, chicken tenders and spaghetti and pizza and that kind of thing, mac and cheese. Parents, talk to your child ahead of time. When you're sitting there at the restaurant deciding what to eat, go over with your child, what do you want to eat? What are you thirsty for today? And get them prepped and comfortable being able to order for themselves from the server. Maggie, I remember when you and Sarah would do that, the servers would be astounded by your ability to do that at such a young age, because they didn't see that a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to learn some confidence and practice your manners, because as soon as you're old enough to make the decision of what you want to eat at a restaurant, that could be a good age for being old enough to ask the server yourself for what you would like to eat. And the parents can always step in. They can always be like kind of looking at the waitress or waiter, and I'm sure they'll get the idea. And the parent can always jump in and be like, sorry, we're practicing this, or she's going to try and order for herself. And if the worst thing that happens is they don't say it, or they say the wrong thing, and the parent's right there to jump in. And it's a good time to practice in a comfortable setting with your parents, especially if it's a restaurant you go to frequently, or that you know the items. You maybe could have practiced at home what you were going to order, or just in the restaurant before the waiter walks over. You could do a quick practice. And yeah, I think that's just a good age. As soon as you're confident in your child to make the decision that they can have what they would like to eat, then they can order it for themselves. Whether that's age 3 or age 6, it could vary depending on the confidence and how often maybe you're doing some of these activities. And the restaurant's just a starting point.
Great, great. Now, I will say we did have one sort of snafu with this process. We were on a family cruise, and we went to a steakhouse for dinner, and Maggie ordered the porterhouse steak, which was an upgrade off the menu, and it was like $90 or something. And you said it with such confidence, and the waiter's writing it down, and I looked down at the menu and saw the upgrade, and I was like, no, you can't have that. So that was a little bit of a snafu, but we were there and we kind of dialed that back. Do you
At least
remember
I was
that,
confident.
Maggie?
I kind of do. You saw the steak right when you walked into the restaurant. They had it like displayed, and I said, I'm getting that.
Yeah, so moving on to high school. This is the time where I think it's important that kids develop the confidence to be able to talk to their teachers. So I remember an example, Maggie, you came home from school and you had just taken a test, and when you got the grade back, you saw that one of the answers you thought was marked incorrectly, and it would have influenced whether you got a B or an A or something like that. And you wanted me to email the teacher, and I said, no, you need to do it yourself. So you can either email the teacher, or better yet, why don't you go into school early the next morning and talk to them ahead of time. Do you remember that example?
Yeah, and having to go into school early and go meet the teacher, and it's so nerve-wracking to walk into the teacher's room. It's just you two, and to start the conversation, I'm sure every teacher's like, oh, hey, Maggie, how are you? What's going on? And having the courage to be like, I think there was a mistake on my test, or I would like to talk to you about this. And you need to have had practice with that when you're younger, to have the confidence to go in and do that and not be shaking, or even if you are, it's okay, or just what to say, how to say it politely. I don't think any teacher has ever changed my grade if I just start off with, you messed up. So you need to go in respectfully, as you should with any adult conversation, and having that confidence to do that is huge. It reminds me of when I was playing soccer as early as middle school and into high school. The coaches would let our parents know early on that if there was any issue with your child's playing time or your child's feelings towards the team or the coach, that the child needs to address the coach in person and talk to them about it. It should not be coming from the parents. It should not be coming from an email from the child or the parents. And I think this was a great learning curve for me, because it was so scary to address a coach or a teacher when you're younger. But it makes so much sense. If my parent is emailing on my behalf, I'm not even sure exactly what was said. So then to go into the classroom or to go to practice the next day, and maybe I didn't even know my parent emailed, or maybe they were asking for one thing, but I thought they were asking for something slightly different. And it just puts a third person in the conversation that should be between two people. And so I think the earlier you can grow confidence in doing that will help you later with a future boss or a future interview or talking to an advisor in college. Just the younger you are to practice those skills helps.
Yeah, I think that in general, kids today seem to be fairly comfortable talking to their peers that are their own age, but it's the talking to adults which is the big challenge. And I think as parents, we can help to build that confidence by practicing with them. So I think the high school teacher example, we practiced the night before what you were going to say. We kind of role played it. Basically, when you walk in, what do you do? How do you start the conversation to really help build your confidence for going in there? And then those skills are going to be important later in life when you have to talk to a college professor, when you have to talk to a boss, when you have to talk to a neighbor that maybe you're not happy with, like developing those skills.
Yeah, and another skill it taught me was to kind of bring some resources. Like if you're mad about a test grade in high school, you can't just show up without the test. You should bring that with you. Or maybe you got your answer from that you thought was correct from a textbook or from a lesson. You could bring that with you. So not only was it the confidence of just talking to an adult, but to learn the skill of maybe arriving before school so that the teacher, that's a good moment to talk to a teacher. They're already at school, they're ready, they have time for you one-on-one. You're not holding up class, you're not doing it in front of the class, to bring your resources and to be confident in the decision you made. And if the child ultimately doesn't feel confident enough or comfortable enough to go talk to their teacher about it, instead of the parent emailing them on their behalf, maybe your grade just doesn't get changed, and then you learn from that, and the next time it happens, you'll grow the confidence.
Exactly. I think another great communication skill tip that we got through the years, and this came from several coaches along the way, both yours and Sarah's, is if there's a communication issue, if you're mad about something, like you're mad about your child's playing time, or you thought they were treated unfairly or whatever, wait 24 hours. So have that cool down period, wait 24 hours, and then make the call, send the email, schedule the meeting.
Definitely. I think that came from a coach I had who said, if you're mad about playing time, you're not allowed to talk to me about it after the game, but after 24 hours, I would love to discuss it with you. And that's another skill too, to being open to that communication, and the coach not just saying, I never want to talk about it, but it's a two-way street. He wants us to cool down and think and gather our thoughts, and then he would be open to discussing and having the confidence on his end to explain why he made a decision.
Yep. The last communication topic I want to talk about is thank you notes. So I think this is a bit of a lost art, but it's something that anybody can do, even if you're shy and introverted. The ability to write a handwritten thank you note goes such a long way. It makes people feel special and valued, and it really sets yourself apart as a very thoughtful communicator. Maggie, do you remember your first thank you note, or when you started writing thank you notes?
I'm sure as early as I was able to write, it started with probably just my grandparents, the first people who would consistently be giving me a gift, and they really appreciate thank you notes. So even if it's just scribbles of thank you, I think thank you notes are a great gesture to show that you really think about the gift that you were given. And I know in today's world, it can be hard to give a gift. Do you give a gift card or cash, or how do you come up with a thoughtful gift? So then when you do that for someone and receiving a thank you note, that they are still thinking about your gift, they really appreciated it, and they're going to take the time to handwrite you a note and thank you for it, is just a great gesture, and will probably make someone want to give you maybe another gift, or give them the confidence that their gift was a good decision.
Yeah, I remember a story about Sarah when she was in college. One of her professors had the whole class over for dinner at her place, and she had a husband and kids and dogs, and this is really an amazing gesture to have the whole class over for dinner. And she did it in groups of 15, and this is something she did every year. And Sarah went out to this bookstore and bought a thank you note and wrote the professor a thank you note. And the teacher stopped her after class like a week later and said, of all the years she's been doing this, Sarah was the only one to ever write her a thank you note.
Wow.
And she said, you go home and thank your mom for this.
Aww.
And she said, this is really going to set her apart in life.
Wow. Even if it's a follow-up text message or phone call, just to express that gratitude, I think it can start even as early as elementary school, whether it's a thank you note to a teacher, if they threw a class party, or they just had a really great school year. Maybe the act of the child writing a thank you note and specifically saying something like, thank you for teaching me how to spell, or thank you for teaching me how to read this book, something that was really thoughtful to the student, that would go a long way with the teacher. Or same thing, it could go with a coach or an after-school program coordinator or a babysitter. Just that helps, I think, kids learn how to be reflective too, and really think that they are thankful for that. And then to have the confidence, we've been talking about confidence with communicating verbally, but confidence in writing, and that can go later into writing emails or other sorts of things. But that story from Sarah's professor is really great, and clearly that was instilled in Sarah earlier in life to write that thank you note. So as early as you can get them started with that.
Yeah, it just becomes a habit. I didn't tell her to write that thank you note. She just wanted to go do it, which made it all the more special. So I want to have a little lightning round with you, Maggie, to help parents who are watching or listening to this podcast. What's the right age for these various activities? So at what age should kids call their grandparents on the phone?
3.
At what age should kids order their own food in a restaurant?
4 or 5.
What about talk to a cashier or ask for help from a clerk in a store?
Maybe 5 with the parent being there.
Write thank you notes.
5.
So as early as they can write,
As early
basically.
as you can write, yeah. Or even sign your name.
Email a teacher or talk to a teacher.
Oh, probably like late middle school and definitely in high school. So like 9 to 11 start doing that.
Okay, and last one. Call to make their own appointments. So their own hair appointment,
that's a good
dentist
one.
appointment, orthodontist appointment.
Probably as old as the child is requesting these appointments themselves. At a young age, you're going to get a haircut, it's scheduled, but maybe as soon as the kid, if they want to color their hair, if they want to cut their hair a different way, they should at least be calling to make the appointment themselves. So probably the same age, like 8 to 10.
Great. I think that's really helpful advice for parents. So in hindsight, what's one thing that parents can do this week to help their children to be better communicators?
I think the story that you started with how to shake hands, is a great life lesson that if you've never talked to your kid about it, maybe just mention it this evening or this week. Like, hey, have we talked about the proper way to shake a hand? I remember you told the story about meeting those two kids, but I remember having one of my friend's dads, one time we were sitting around, I think we were maybe having dinner at their house, and he was like, do you guys know how to shake hands? And we were like, yeah, you just shake a hand. And he said, no, you have to look the person in the eye, you have a firm hand, a slight squeeze, and confidence, and it's a hard, firm handshake. And he went around, and there were maybe 4 or 5 of us sitting there, including his own daughter, and we all shook his hand, and it was silly, and it was awkward. But if it's awkward with my friend's dad, who see all the time, it's going to be even more awkward with a stranger. So I think that's a great life lesson. Should we practice?
Yeah, let's show everyone how to do it. Okay, so this is how I taught people how to shake hands. So you start with your hand like this, so kind of your thumb up. So the key is to get into this thumb pit area with the other person's thumb pit. So when you walk up to them, start out with
Shoulders
your hand
back.
ready. Eye contact, nice squeeze. Nice to meet you, Maggie.
You too. Yeah, I think that's a great thing to practice this week.
So my advice for things that parents can do this week is, if your family goes out to dinner, have your child and your children order their own meals. It can start there, and it can be that simple. So every time we do something for our kids that they're capable of doing for themselves, again, we're missing those little moments to help build confidence. So thank you all for joining us today for today's podcast. If you liked this episode, please like it, please share it. We'd love to hear your comments. Put them in the comment section. If you have questions for us or topics you'd like to hear us talk about, please feel free to email parentinginhindsight@gmail.com. And remember, the lessons come in hindsight, but the connection with your children start today. Thank you all for joining us.